How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the Kitsune rebel and got harem with Moka? Part 2. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Naruto was training in the middle of the woods that surrounded the academy. His knuckles were bleeding from punching a tree for the past half hour, and now his legs were starting to ache because he was delivering kick after kick to the trunk of a very solid redwood. The whiskered blonde was gritting his teeth and working out his frustration. He was being chased by the two most beautiful girls in his grade and he had no idea how to deal with it. He was always the one doing the chasing, Sakura could atone to that. The toad-eyed boy growled as he delivered a chakra-infused roundhouse kick and created a large dent in the tree. Naruto pulled his leg back and rubbed it, groaning as the muscle and broken skin healed slowly. Turning around and leaning back against the tree, he continued to think about what was going on in his life. He was far from home, no contact with old friends as of yet, but he could still summon. The thought of summoning brought him back to earlier, before he killed a faculty member. He was sure he would be in the clear, but he was still nervous about what would happen to him. Biting down on his thumb, Naruto pushed 10% of his chakra into his summoning technique and slammed his hand into the ground, Uchiha no Jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, a horse-sized red and blue toad appeared wearing a blue vest. Around his waist was an orange belt that had a small wakizashi and a sake bottle attached to it. He looked around before his yellow eyes landed on the blonde in front of him, and he grinned. "Geez, bro, where you been?" Gamakichi asked with his grin on his face. Naruto grinned back and held his fist out, the toad giving him a light tap with his own fist. "Been stuck here ever since I killed Team and took his eyes," the blonde said, pointing at his eyes. Gamakichi looked at them and nodded. "Finally got him, eh?" Gamakichi asked as he took his sake bottle off his belt and took a drink before passing it to Naruto. The whiskered blonde nodded thankfully and wiped the opening off before taking his own sip of the forbidden drink. Naruto swallowed another gulp down before wiping his mouth off with his arm and giving Gamakichi his bottle back. The blonde looked at the toad and asked, "So any idea why it took 10% of my chakra to summon you?" "I mean, before I killed Team it only took 1. Gamakichi mused over this as he drank his rice water. When he finished and corked the bottle again he replied, "Maybe when you took his eyes, you gained more chakra. I think you could summon Minato, because she is usually 1/10 the amount of chakra needed to summon me. You might think it's 10% of your chakra, but you have so much now that your chakra equations in your head are off. The chakra you used to summon me was in fact 10% of your old chakra amount, but seeing as you just got more, you couldn't differentiate the difference between 1% and 10%. Might wanna work on that. So I have 10 times my old amount of chakra, eh?" Naruto mused aloud once he understood what Gamakichi said as he looked at the sky. The horse-eyed toad walked to Naruto's side and relaxed with him. He looked at the blonde before looking back up at the sky with a sad smile. "Hiro-sennin is dead," Gamakichi said, knowing how the blonde would react. Naruto froze, not moving. Going ahead and continuing, the toad said, "He died fighting the leader of the Akatsuki. Pain. Tsunade is currently preparing for war against a Megakure. Gaara is going to assist her." Naruto's fists clenched and he moved his head to rest on his knees before he asked, "Am I going back?" Gamakichi shook his head sadly, "The toads are staying out of the fight. Ma and Pa are too injured and Konoha banished you. Pops is mad, but he's staying out of the fight too, and I quote, teach a lesson to those ungrateful stupid." Naruto chuckled darkly, "That sounds just like Bunta. How's Gamatetsu?" "Out Yudo?" Gamakichi asked, glancing at the blonde out of the corner of his eye before looking back up. "He's okay. Gotten really fat from the sweets he stole from me. I don't care though, I got my sake." Naruto snorted, "Drunken baka." "I'm not," Gamakichi shot back with a grin as Naruto laughed, "What's this about you having 2 girls after you, bro? Minato read your note to mom. She thinks it was sweet that you wanted to ask Hiro-sennin for advice." "How is your mom, Kichi?" Naruto asked, still keeping his head resting on his knees and changing the subject. Gamakichi chuckled. "She's alright, bro," the toad replied, "she's busy with the tadpoles, but you know." "Yeah," Naruto replied with a nod. His head snapped up when a twig snapped and he saw the 2 girls that were, last he knew, fighting over him. Kuruma was wearing one of his hoodies, still probably wearing her lingerie underneath it, and Moka was carrying his school uniform vest while still wearing her school uniform. Scrapes and bruises were on both of their cheeks and arms, evidence of their fight. Gamakichi looked at both girls before whistling and slugging Naruto in the arm, "Way to go, bro. They're better than you made them out to be in the letter." The 3 teens all turned a slight shade of red when the 2 girls did a double take at the toad. Their eyes widened and they looked back at the toad-eyed blonde questionably. Naruto turned and glared at the toad. "Itchy," Naruto growled. The toad laughed nervously before suddenly dispelling with a puff of smoke. The blonde brought his fists up to his head and growled into them before looking back up. What was that? Was that a toad? What happened to the tree? Naruto-kun? You okay? Naruto-koi? Naruto rubbed his temples as the two girls bombarded him with questions concerning the area. Several trees were partially destroyed by his attacks and he was covered in sweat and blood. He held his hands up and said, "Enough." Both girls silenced as he stood up and rubbed his forehead. Naruto looked at them before saying, "That was my summoning toad and one of my best friends, Gamakichi. He is a summoning animal. In my village or my continent, it is common for people to sign contracts with beasts from another realm. I can't go into how it's done because I don't exactly understand it myself." "What exactly are you, Naruto-koi?" Kurumu asked after taking a moment to let the information sink in. Naruto grinned slightly as he started to walk away. Moka and Kurumu exchanged a look glare before following him and heard his quiet response. "I'm one of a kind." The next day, Naruto and Moka found themselves in their homeroom, one taking notes and the other plotting a prank. Nekonom was talking about blending into the human world and how a greater portion of humanity groups together based on their common interests. "So for today," Nekonom said with a smile, "I want you all to take the time today to visit all the club stands and find one to join. One like, oh say, the newspaper club." Naruto looked up from his plotting and flipped his notebook shut. It was filled with multiple plans for pranks. He looked over at Moka, who was looking at him with a smile. He smiled back, but he had a feeling she was still wondering what monster he was. The bell rang, signaling the end of class and apparently the end of the school day. "Please be sure to stop by and have a look at our newspaper club," Nekonom called out as Naruto and Moka left the room. Naruto looked over at some of the club stands before Moka started pulling him to random ones. The chemistry club smiled when the pink-haired girl approached them, scowling when they saw the blonde that was being dragged in their direction. The brown-haired boy with braces, the apparent leader of the club, stepped forward and gave her a friendly smile. "Why hello there," he said with a nasally voice, "can you help us with the love potion we're working on?" Moka had not fully understood his words, so she smiled and said, "Sure, why not?" Before the brown-haired boy could give her a glass with green liquid, Naruto intercepted it and sniffed its contents. Coughing to the side, the blonde gave the glass back and said, "Okay, wow, first off, that is not a love potion. That's knockout gas." The chemists all swallowed heavily, and Moka blinked as Naruto continued with a smile, "Good thing I checked it, otherwise Moka-chan here would be unconscious, and I would have to carry her all the way to the nurse's office and explain what happened. I might have to deal with the SPC member that hangs out there, too. Apparently they don't trust me." Moka smiled and looked at the chemists, well said boys all shrunk back under the whiskered blonde's gaze. His tomot eyes were narrowed and spinning, making them all become fully aware of his thoughts. "If you try to drug any girl ever again, I will kill you." Moka, unaware of Naruto's silent threat, said, "Thank you, but I don't think I want to work with chemicals that could hurt me if I'm not careful." "Yes, it'd be for the best," the nasally voice of the club president said as Moka dragged the still glaring Naruto away. The next stand wasn't any better for Naruto. The photography club had tried to get Moka to go with them and pose for pictures while wearing some revealing clothing. Moka had to restrain Naruto from mauling the boy that tried to get her to wear a sexy nurse outfit. Thankfully, she managed to pull him to the next stand before he killed someone, but unfortunately, the president of the photography club suffered some bruising and scrapes around his neck. "Honestly, Naruto-kun, what am I going to do with you?" the pink-haired vampire asked her whiskered blonde crush. The blonde simply shrugged and interlocked his hands behind his head when a certain blue-haired girl wrapped her arms around his neck and jumped onto his back, making his arms go to his side to support her shapely legs. The girl's impressive bust pressed into his back and Naruto's face turned a light shade of red when she leaned forward and whispered into his ear, "Where have you been hiding, Naruto-koi?" Hi Kurumu-chan," Naruto sputtered out as she teased him by nibbling on his earlobe. Kurumu kissed his neck softly, making the blonde go rigid as he froze in place and making Moka grind her teeth in annoyance. "Get off of Naruto-kun, Kurumu," Moka growled. Kurumu scowled at the pinkette but got off him all the same. Before Naruto could feel any safer, Kurumu grabbed his arm and pulled it between her fists. "Naruto-koi," she whined slightly with a pout, "come join the cooking club with me." Well, I promised Moka that we'd be in a club together," Naruto said, slightly nervous. He honestly didn't want to inadvertently start another fight between the girls, mainly because of all the boys now leering in their direction and glaring in his. Kurumu scowled at the triumphant-looking Moka before grinning and looking at Naruto. "Good. Then you both can join me in cooking club," she said. Naruto face-palmed while Moka glared at her. They had found out last night when they decided to make dinner together that Moka can't cook anything. Kurumu teased her about it for a while as they waited for the pizza they ordered to arrive before Naruto made her stop. Before Moka could attack the succubus and form a crowd, Naruto stepped in and said, or we can all find a club together. One that we're all good at. One like a swimming club. Naruto asked as he found himself standing in front of a booth with a bikini-clad girl standing behind it. Moka was frowning while Kurama was grinning from ear to ear. The blue-haired girl had dragged them to this club mainly because of two things. 1, she wanted Naruto to see her in a bikini. And 2, she wanted to see Naruto in a speedo. A devious plan indeed. I don't think we should join this club, Moka said quietly. Before Naruto could agree with her, the girl behind the counter spoke up. She was quite beautiful, almost as equally beautiful as Moka or Kurama, if Naruto had to be honest. Her light ocean blue hair fell behind her in a straight manner, leaving her almost mode-like face open for the world to see. "Aw, but we don't have a lot of boys in our club," she pouted, leaning over the counter with her head in her hands. "What's your name, cutie?" "I'm Ichinis Tamao, current recruiter of the girls' swimming club." Kuruma's smile immediately fell and she grabbed onto Naruto's arm. "Come on, Naruto-koi. Let's find another club." Tamao scowled as the two girls lead the whiskered blonde away. He really was intriguing to her, what with not wearing school uniform, but a slightly fitting mesh shirt underneath a white shirt and a torn school jacket. She really liked his eyes though. Blue, her favorite color, with 3 small commas swirling around his pupils. It was so exotic. Maybe I can corner him later today, the girl thought as she turned her charm on another group of boys, and maybe he'd be better off not joining the club. This looks promising, Moka mused as she stopped outside her homeroom. There were newspapers posted all over the chalkboard on the wall outside the door. Naruto, who was stuck between the two girls, both had their arms around his and were pressing his arms into their cleavages, was thinking about a club he had walked over to, while leaving a bunch to help Kurama and Moka find a club for the 3 of them. The Monstars Club, the guy recruiting had shown him a lot that pissed him off, and a lot that infuriated him. 2 very different feelings. For once, Moka, you're right, Kurama said with a smile as she looked up at the quiet Naruto. Don't you think so, Naruto-koi? Naruto didn't reply as he thought about what the wyvern, who ironically was named Vern, said about the school. The student police committee was corrupt and arresting innocents because rich students paid them off, or high-ranking officials didn't approve of hybrid monsters being smart. It disgusted him, and he asked Vern where he could sign up. Technically, it's not a club, they're more along the lines of a gang, so he was told to wait until the next day. They were a legal gang, but a gang nonetheless. He was told the SPC couldn't shut them down, despite constant attempts, because the headmaster backed them in their goals. Or so he had said he did. "Naruto-kun?" Moka asked, concerned for her crush as he was more reserved than usual. Naruto shook himself from his thoughts and looked at the two girls. "What did I miss?" he asked them. They both sighed before smiling at him, finding his odd confused state adorable. "Danae-san, please leave." Now, Nekonom's voice came from the classroom. They all turned to see a rather handsome black-haired boy leave the classroom with a scowl and walk down the opposite way they were, stopping at the photography club and smiling. Naruto, Moka, and Kurama walked into the classroom to see Nekonom sitting with her head in her hands, her ears flat against her head and her tail down in a droop. "Sensei?" Naruto asked, stepping forward and out of the girl's hold. Nekonom's ears perked up and she looked up to see the 3. She smiled. "Oh, hello, Uzumaki-kun," she said, her voice sounding slightly depressed. "I'm sorry, but you've caught me at a bad time." "So we can't sign up for the newspaper club?" Naruto asked with a frown. "Damn. You want to join the newspaper club?" The catgirl asked with her tail waving slowly and her ears fully perked up as a smile came over her face. Naruto grinned. "Yeah," he said, "I mean, it's open, right? Investigative journalism seems right for me. I've always liked taking photos," Kurama mused with a smile. Moka smiled as well and put her hands behind her as she said, "And I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, so I could be the editor." "So much a perfectionist that it ruins whatever dish you try to cook," the blue-haired girl muttered, earning a glare from the pink-haired girl. I don't know what to say," the teacher said with a smile. "Oh, I thank you." "Why?" Naruto asked as he sat on a desk. "We're students that want to join a club. You're a teacher that happens to need students for her club. It's just a normal occurrence, right?" Nekonom smiled and clapped her hands together. "Let's get you all started then." Moka sighed as she edited the story Nekonom-sensei had given her concerning the brown-haired boy that had left earlier. His name was Morioka Janae. He was a werewolf and apparently a pervert, hence why he was kicked out of the club. Nekonom had no choice but to kick him off when he came forward with his admittance to being a pervert, something that made Kurumu's nose crinkle with disgust. She sighed again and put the pencil in her hand to the side of the desk before looking out the window. Kuruma was working on something for the cooking club to get a story started for her small cooking with Kuruma section, and Naruto had gone missing shortly after his trip to the bathroom. The Pincat was now sitting in her dorm room wondering why she even agreed to be the editor of the club. Her thoughts were interrupted when a certain blue-haired girl busted through her door. "Kurumu, what are you?" Her question was cut off as the busty succubus grabbed her arm and pulled her from her chair. "No time. Naruto-koi's in trouble," the blue-haired girl said as she transformed into her true state and threw the Pincat's window open. She grabbed Moka's arms and flew out the window, carrying her as she flew quickly. "What do you mean?" Moka asked. Kurumu didn't look at her, only managing to scowl. "I saw that swimming club fish asking Nekonom-sensei about him," the girl replied. Moka blinked and then shouted up at the succubus for her to hurry up. Moka told herself she wouldn't let anyone take Naruto from her, and she meant it. Naruto didn't even know how he got into this mess. All he knows is that after becoming the official number 1 of the Monstars, lowest number is lowest rank, oddly enough, he was cornered by Tamao, the swimming club recruiter. She asked if he wanted to join her club again, frowning when he told her he joined a different club. She perked up when she discovered he was a journalist for the paper and offered to become his first interview. It was when he agreed that it all went south. "Are you sure I have to wear a bathing suit?" Naruto asked as he looked at the different male trunks that were on the wall of the swimming club's gear shed. Tamao pouted. "Well, you want to be comfortable when you interview me, right?" "Well yeah, but..." The blue-haired girl smiled. "Then just grab one so we can start the interview." Naruto sighed and grabbed a pair of trunks that were dark blue and had orange stripes down the side. Tamao smiled and pushed him into the changing room, where he did as the room was named after, before coming back out in his white shirt, trunks, and sandals. He had sealed his other clothes into his left arm with a quick use of his blood before coming back out. He blinked in confusion when the blue-haired girl just stared at him when he came out, not focusing at all when he waved his hand in front of her. "Oh yes. Jackpot." Tamao thought as she saw the whiskered blonde walk out of the changing room. "Look at those arms, oh how I can't wait to get him out of that shirt and into the hot tub. I wonder what type of monster he is. I hope he's not an orc or troll. Well, wait, he can't be with those eyes. Oh, what if our babies have his eyes?" "Tamao-san?" Naruto asked, using her name and snapping her from her thoughts. "Where to?" Tamao smiled and grabbed the whiskered blonde's arm before dragging him with her to the hot tub. When they entered the room where the hot tub was, she smiled and sauntered into the hot tub, her legs transforming into a fish tail and her ears changing into fin-like appendages. Naruto instantly thought of a distant memory of a girl much like himself named Asrabi. "A mermaid," he said quietly, a small amount of awe in his voice. Tamao smiled seductively up at him and waited in the hot tub. "Heard of us?" the blue-haired girl asked. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and smiled sheepishly. I got my first kiss from a girl that was like a mermaid." Score, he's tasted maiden lips. "This is going to be easier than I thought," Tamao thought with a small smile. "Well, wanna come join me in here and we can talk?" Why not?" Naruto said with a shrug, not getting the hidden message the mermaid added. He set the notebook he unsealed from his right arm down on his side before taking his shirt off and setting it aside. Tamao's eyes glazed over as she looked at his defined body. "My god," she thought as he stepped into the hot tub, "I see why he had Akashiya and Kurin hanging off of him like that. I mean look at him. He's got to be a demigod or something. Wonder if either of the two girls left their mark on him yet. Bah, who cares? He's mine now." "So how do you want to go about this?" Naruto asked the mermaid, unaware of her plotting mind. He slowly became aware when Tamao wrapped her tail around his waist and sat on his lap. The blonde was thrown another curveball when the mermaid leaned into his neck and took in a large inhale of breath. So unbelievably young and strong," Tamao said in a breathy voice as her hands started dancing over his shoulders. Naruto was frozen now. The blood was rushing from his main brain to his male one, and he was doing everything in his power to stop it. While Tamao kept exploring his developed upper torso, Naruto stared blankly ahead while a single thought continued to go through his mind in an effort to stop the inevitable erection that was slowly making itself known. Iro Senin naked, Iro Senin naked, Iro Senin naked, Iro Senin naked, Iro oh, hey that felt really good, Naruto thought when Tamao ran her fingers over his pectoral muscles. A subtle twitch in his lower region snapped him from his short daze, and he thought, no. Bad Naruto. Iro baka. Focus. Iro Senin naked, Iro Senin naked. Tamao smiled at the zoned-out blonde, finding his trembling and frozen look adorable. His karma-filled eyes were swirling slowly, making the mermaid lick her lips in anticipation. Tamao relaxed and allowed the heated waters to fully affect her, making her tail transform back into the bikini bottom, clad lower half that she had before, the only difference now being small fins protruding from the back of her ankles. Her legs wrapped around Naruto's waist, and she ground her hips against his own, gasping when something pressed against her nether regions. Naruto was now trembling in fear, anticipation, excitement, arousal, and exhaustion. He knew what the mermaid wanted now, and he was not prepared in any way to deny her advances. The toad-eyed blonde prayed to the higher entities above to save himself from being injured for acting like a pervert. His prayers were answered when the door busted open with Kurama and Moka kicking the door open. Tamao growled at the intrusion while Naruto allowed his head to roll back as he thanked the universe. "Leave my Naruto-koi alone, fish." Kurama shrieked, transforming into her full succubus state and leaping at the mermaid, while Moka helped Naruto get out of the hot tub. Naruto rested his cheek against the concrete ground and relished in the cold feeling of it, helping him relax from his arousal. Moka looked up just before Kurama was thrown into her, and Naruto was separated from the calming ground, making him pout as Tamao grabbed him by the shoulders. Tamao grinned from behind the whiskered blonde at the two groaning girls while she pulled Naruto towards the hot tub. Feeling rather pleased with herself, Tamao gloated, "You two tried so hard, didn't you? All for naught. He's mine now and I can tell he'll survive the mating swim." "The what now?" Naruto repeated in confusion while Kurama and Moka snapped their heads up with a wince as they exclaimed simultaneously, "No." "Yes." Tamao said with glee as she prepared to throw Naruto into the warm waters. When she did throw him, Naruto decided against becoming a personal tuck toy for the strange mermaid and landed with chakra covering his feet, allowing him to stand on the water. Tamao looked at the blonde with wide eyes and she whispered, "What, how are you not in the water? How do you stand on it?" Naruto grinned and tapped the side of his nose, trade secret. The mermaid growled and leapt at him, tackling him from the hot tub to the nearby pool. When they were in the colder water, Tamao transformed from the more beautiful state she was in before to a ferocious shark-like mermaid. Her teeth and claws now razor sharp and her eyes were slitted in anger and frustration of having her mating swim interrupted. She watched with a growl as Naruto shot up from the water with a gasp and climbed onto its surface as though it was land. The blonde stood on the water, panting slightly as the pool was deeper than it looked. The whiskered boy yelped and leapt over the mermaid as she swam at him, attempting to grab his ankles from underwater. "Why do you defy me?" Tamao asked with a growl, "Am I not desirable? Would you not want me as a mate?" "Tamao-san," Naruto said with a deadpan voice, "I'm only 16. I do not want to be tied down just yet." "It is not your decision anymore." The mermaid shouted before swimming at him again. Naruto yelped and ran towards the land where Moka and Kurama were watching with worry etched on their features. The toad-eyed teen leapt for the land when his ankle was grabbed by the ocean blue-haired girl. He flailed in midair before Moka grabbed his arms, starting a tug-of-war between the two girls with Naruto as the rope. Kurama latched onto Moka's waist in an effort to help her destined one and rival. "Release him. He is mine." Tamao snarled, "Either as my mate or as my meal, but he is mine nonetheless." Naruto looked back at the crazed mermaid before looking back at Moka. With slight effort on his part, Naruto reached up and grabbed the rosary around Moka's neck. With a reassuring wink to the pinket, Naruto pinched Moka's arm, making her yelp in pain before she released him. Tamao pulled Naruto into the water with great force, causing the rosary in Naruto's hand to snap off of Moka's neck. Kurama yelped and released Moka, jumping back to avoid being hit by the energy she released as she reverted to her true form. The silver-haired vampire looked around before looking at the water and seeing Naruto rush to his feet while on the water and barely avoid the swipe made at his legs by the mermaid. Moka narrowed her eyes, watching the blonde as he ran across the surface of the water, trying to make sense of what he was doing. "You gonna just stand there or are you gonna help me?" Naruto yelped as he was narrowly bitten on the behind. Tamao snarled and chased the blonde as he ran in a zigzag pattern across the surface of the pool. Moka scoffed and shook her head, "I would normally just allow this to continue, but I do wish for answers as to how you are walking on water." She looked at the blue-haired succubus and spoke with authority in her voice, "Succubus, fly over the pool and get that buffoon before he trips and drowns himself." "I am not a buffoon." Naruto shouted as he ran across the water, stumbling for a moment but recovering in record time. He looked back at the white-haired vampire that was looking at him with a small, smug smile on her face. The blonde blushed in embarrassment and anger as he ran before shouting, "I stumbled, not tripped." "Whatever helps you sleep at night," Moka muttered before looking back at the succubus, "Well. Oh, right," Kurama replied sheepishly before flying over the pool and grabbing Naruto's outstretched hand. She groaned with effort as she carried the blonde to the surface, dropping next to him when she was sure they were safe. The blue-haired succubus looked at the toad blonde that was catching his breath and said, "Naruto-koi, you gotta lay off the ramen." Tamao shrieked in frustration of being robbed of her prospective mate or meal. She grabbed her hair as she shrieked, looking back at the smug vampire on the other edge. With narrowed eyes she swam towards the vampire with impressive speed before suddenly turning to the right and dousing the silver-haired girl in water. It was a little-known fact that vampires were weakened by water, most humans believing it had to be blessed water only. This misconception was brought about during the first few years of Count Dracula's rule in Transylvania. A traveling monk had come across the count as he fed off the carcass of a deceased calf. This was when he tried to regain a hold on his humanity. Disgusted and horrified, the monk said a quick prayer before grabbing his only possession, a canteen with a cross made of metal attached to it, before throwing its contents at the count. Dracula shrieked and reverted to his true form, fleeing the scene clumsily before more pain could be bestowed upon him. The monk believed it to be the work of the cross outside of the canteen, not once believing the simple combination of hydrogen and oxygen atoms was the cause of the count's pain. The count would be known as a disgrace to the vampire race for revealing their true weakness to humans, even if the apes had gotten it wrong. Moka hacked violently on the water, feeling rather sick as it went down her throat. The silver-haired vampire groaned as she began to feel weak from the water seeping into her skin. She looked across the way to see Naruto standing to his feet and looking back at her. Before he could say anything, Tamao swam by again, sending a large amount of water at the vampire, causing her to shriek in pain and fall to her knees. "What's wrong, vampire? Don't wanna swim?" Tamao taunted as Moka curled up on her knees, hacking violently. The mermaid continued her verbal assault. "I thought only holy water was your weakness." "What is she talking about?" Naruto asked Kurumu as they rushed around the side of the pool, being sure to keep their distance. The succubus looked back at her destined one with slight surprise. "Vampires are weak against water and any type of monster that dwells in it," she explained. "Monsters have residue of where they are from in their blood." Naruto recalled Moka's complaining about what monster he was and the sentence referring to his being water-based. She said she would have felt sick. The blonde's eyes widened in realization as he also threw in what Kurumu was saying. He had to get to Moka now, or she'd undoubtedly drown as Tamao kept barraging her with large waves of water. Raising his hands up in the tiger seal, Naruto cried out, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Instantly, 6 more Narutos appeared in puffs of smoke. Kurumu froze in her spot, staring at all the shirtless, slightly wet blondes that stood before her. She passed out with a massive nosebleed as a rather nasty thought concerning all of them, her, and her bedroom entered the young succubus's mind. "3 of you grab Moka-san and get her away from the pool," the original Naruto instructed. "The rest of us surrounded and ready the birds." "Hi, boss." The clones shouted as one before they leapt off to do as they were instructed. 3 clones helped Moka move away from the water before 2 used a light futon technique to help dry her off. The silver-haired Moka looked around in shock as she found herself surrounded by 3 duplicates of the whiskered blonde. The remaining others all leapt into action around the pool, making Tamao freeze in shock of being surrounded by the many duplicates of the blonde. They all performed many hand seals before soft chirping came from their hands as lightning covered them. The original smiled at Tamao sadly as her eyes widened in fear. "I'm sorry about this, Tamao-san," Naruto said before he and his clones shoved their hands into the water, the original exclaiming, "Jidori." Tamao convulsed for 30 seconds before she floated to the surface, her eyes shut and her breathing labored. The clones all vanished with small puffs of smoke and the original walked onto the surface to where Tamao lay unconscious. The Tomoed blonde carefully picked the mermaid up from her spot in the water, carrying her bridal style. He walked towards the silver-haired Moka, the rosary in her hand and Kurumu on her left. The succubus's scheming mind was fully active, wondering exactly what his clones could be used for aside from fighting. "What was that, Uzumaki?" Moka demanded, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. Naruto grinned at her foxily, his Tomoed eyes swirling slowly. "A specialty of mine," Naruto replied nonchalantly. Moka narrowed her eyes even further and then looked at the girl in his arms with a scowl as she crossed her arms over her chest. "And what do you plan to do with her?" Moka asked. "Ravage her body as a prize." Naruto looked appalled at the insinuation and he spat at the vampire's feet. Moka growled at him for the show of disrespect, stopping when he spoke in a threatening tone. "I know better than to take advantage of girls, damn it. My village has numerous raped women and the crime was punishable by death if one ever attempted it. So no, Moka-san, I am not going to ravage her body as a prize. Now if you'd put the damn rosary back on and go the tuck away, I'd be very grateful." "You do not boss me around, Uzumaki," Moka snarled, taking a step towards him. She froze as his tomos suddenly spun quickly in a blur. The vision within them was clear and made the prideful vampire swallow in fear as she trembled. What he had showed her with that small gaze frightened the normally hostile vampire, a feat of its own. The vision he showed her was a rape victim recovery office through his own eyes as he comforted a girl with buns in her hair with the help of a bowl-cut haired boy. A pale-eyed effeminate looking boy was clenching and unclenching his fists. "If you ever insinuate that again, Moka-san, I will find a way to seal you for good," Naruto threatened gravely to get his message across. The silver-haired girl trembled even more from the threat, finding excitement in his threat. What was even stranger was she became slightly aroused from it. Naruto paid no heed to the shocked blue-haired succubus or the slightly excited vampire, continuing instead to the nurse's office. He was unaware that the girl in his arms was still conscious enough to hear his words, nor was he aware that she would continue to chase him along with Kurama and Moka, both of her personas for reasons of their own. The inner Moka wished to know how he was so strong, while the outer simply wished to know exactly what Naruto was. Naruto walked down the hallways towards the old gymnasium. He had left with the excuse of having to use the bathroom. He did send a bunchin back so as not to seem suspicious. The tomoed blonde closed the door behind him and turned around to see a green-haired boy about a foot shorter than him standing before him. "Were you followed?" The green-haired boy asked as his hazel eyes darted around. Naruto shook his head and he continued, "Good lad. I be Mac. Bein' a leprechaun is me game, so don't be making any cracks about me accent, you get me?" Naruto nodded and Mac smiled, revealing a pair of gold canines on the top row of his teeth. "Good ta no. Follow me then, boyo." Mac led Naruto to the crumbling rock wall before stopping and looking back at the whiskered blonde. Quietly he said, "Remember this once, boyo, cuz I'll never show it to ye again." Naruto nodded and Mac turned back to the rock wall. He grabbed a red rock, twisted it 180 degrees to the left before grabbing a green one and turning it to the right 45 degrees. Finally, he grabbed the yellow rock and pulled it out before pushing it back in. A click went off and the rock wall shifted backwards before sliding into the wall. Naruto grinned in approval while walking in behind the shorter boy, the rock wall moving back into place behind them. They walked down a dark and dank hallway for a while before they came to a large set of wooden doors. Mac opened them and 4 boys were in the room on the other side. They were all wearing school uniforms, modified of course to look a lot like the Chunin vest his sensei used to wear, only without scroll carriers. Basically they were forest green leather vests with the school insignia on the left side. Naruto had noticed the back of Mac's vest had 4 religious symbols he had seen while training with Jiraiya. An ancient circle that was divided into 4 sections with a noticeable cross being formed underneath a 6-pointed star that had a smaller normal pentagram within it, while a crescent was at the top of the 3 shapes, making it seem as though there were horns on the formed shape. The tallest and biggest of them had white hair and a pale complexion. His eyes were a dark black, a solid contrast to his hair and skin complexion. He was leaning against what looked like a bar, a bottle of some kind of drink in his hands. He took a sip of his drink and continued to look at the whiskered blonde. Mac gestured to him and said, "That be Blitz, our resident yeti. Be the quiet type, and yet his girl be the most beautiful siren ye ever did see of the 3rd year." "Shut up, Mac," Blitz replied before he took another drink of what was now easily seen to be a Coca-Cola. Mac then gestured to the second tallest boy with a blue tattoo on his shaved head that looked similar to a serrated arrow. He wore only the modified school vest with a black tank top underneath it and shredded jeans. Mac introduced him, "That's Draco. 3 guesses as to what type of monster he be, and I'll tell you this, he ain't no fairy." "I'm a dragon," Draco said quietly as his nostrils flared and smoke exhaled from them. "I'm also in command." Naruto nodded his understanding and Mac gestured to the familiar blue-haired teen that was sitting on the wall. "You already know our recruiter Vern." Vern looked up from his writing down on the clipboard in his hand and nodded to the blonde before hopping from one wall to the other and examining the vent with a small machine. Naruto watched with curiosity before Mac directed his attention to the last person. He was skinny, scary skinny, bone was visible, and his skin was pale. "But there be Tommy Rawhead," Mac said with a smile, "he be our new information boy, 1st year like yourself. He's a boogeyman. He, like yourself, is a monsters proby." "Hey, call me Rawhead," Rawhead said with a slight Scottish accent and ghostly voice as he waved. Naruto grinned back and held his hand out. "Naruto. You're in my chem class right?" Naruto asked. Rawhead nodded. "Aye," the boogeyman replied in his ghostly voice, "ye be the one that blew the stink bomb." Naruto grinned, "Word gets around." "Okay, enough with the reunion," Draco said as he pushed himself off the wall. "We lost about 3 people due to graduation last year. All we have now are us. Right now, I'm going to tell you this group isn't fun and games. We're going to destroy the SPC and anyone else that threatens the student body." "Isn't that what the SPC does?" Rawhead asked, tilting his head slightly. Draco shook his head. "No," the dragon started, "the SPC is complicated." "We're clear, boss," Vern said as he dropped from the ceiling. "No wires, cameras, spy gear, monsters, ghouls, ghosts, or spells. Tell him." Draco nodded and turned to the 2. With a gravely serious voice, he said, "The SPC is corrupt, as you know. Recently, they paid off the last member of the newspaper club off to come clean about his nature to the head of the club and got rid of him. He was our old informant as to what was going on around the school. He was instantly accepted by the photography club." Naruto swallowed, concerned for his friend's own safety, but remained quiet as Draco continued, "The SPC don't care about the student body. They care for themselves and the school's secret remaining that way. They also only care about delivering their own type of justice, and that's exact definition is determined by Kuyo. That is wrong on so many levels, Rawhead said with a shake of his head. You have no idea, Vern spat out from his spot. Naruto and Rawhead looked at the wyvern to see him clenching his fists. The SPC captures students that they believe to be threats to the school. No one sees them ever again after that. Vern walked away after that, disappearing into a room with the number 3 carved into it. The two newbies looked at Draco and saw him rubbing the back of his head. With a sigh, Draco said, his stepsister, Mira, was taken last year by the SPC. When she was returned at the year's break, she was instantly hospitalized and currently she's just starting to show signs of movement in her legs. Naruto ground his teeth and Rawhead narrowed his eyes. The two exchanged a look before looking back at Draco. The dragon grinned as the two probies were tossed a vest each. Both of them put their vests on before looking back at Draco. The dragon pulled a cigarette out and blew fire onto it before shoving it in his mouth and smirked at them. By the way, welcome to Yokai, Draco said, his fang teeth glinting in the sunlight. Flashback end. Uzumaki-kun. The nurse spoke, earning the blonde's and the girl's attention. Your friend is fine, just unconscious. She is awake now, so you can come in if you'd like. Naruto smiled, thank you, nurse-san. The nurse smiled at his politeness, feel free to call me Tsunade-san, Uzumaki-kun. Naruto's jaw dropped and his eye widened as the nurse, now ironically known as Tsunade, walked away from the room and the three. The two girls with Naruto looked at him as he sat frozen with a gaping mouth and twitching eyes. No tucking way he drew out before collapsing in a fit of laughs. When the blue-eyed boy regained control of himself, Naruto went into Tamao's room, Kurumu and Moka, following quickly to keep an eye on the mermaid that had tried to kill him. Still snickering over the irony, Naruto gave a very apologetic-looking Tamao a large grin, his good mood now dominating his person. Aheyo, Tamao-chan. He greeted, unknowingly giving the girl that had tried to kill him and his friends a seemingly affectionate suffix, upsetting the two girls standing behind him. Tsunade-san said you weren't fried. Hi, Tamao replied with a slight twitch and a nod. Her look suddenly turned somber and she looked down at her hands, fidgeting with her sheet and chewing on her bottom lip. Naruto recalled exactly why he had to have 3 clones and himself use the Jidori, and he went back to his original state, upset. So want to tell me why you tried to rape then kill me? Naruto asked, arching a brow before gesturing with his thumb to Kurumu. I mean, Kurumu-chan tried to hypnotize me and even got into a scuffle with Moka-chan that I had to break up more than once. Tamao failed to come up with any words so Naruto continued, crossing his arms over his chest, his hand resting on the invisible seal that held his Monstar's vest. Listen, he said, moving a hand to rub his temple, if you want, I can ask Moka and Kurumu to leave and you can tell me yourself. No. The two in question shouted immediately, both locking glares on the girl trying to steal their man. They hadn't fully forgiven the blue-haired girl for trying to claim Naruto as her own. Quiet, Naruto growled, his tomo spinning wildly as he glanced at Moka and then Kurumu before looking back at Tamao with irritation written on his face, or I can introduce you to my happy place. Kurumu and Moka collectively shuddered in fear, both wrapping their arms around themselves as they recalled his happy place. There was nothing happy about the Tsukiyomi realm he dragged them to. Heck, the place had become the background of many nightmares they had. When they weren't dreaming about their favorite blonde, that is. I am tired of being alone, Tamao whispered, bringing her knees to rest under her chin as she wrapped her arms around her legs. Being a mermaid isn't fun, our mates usually die during our consummation and we usually feed by either draining young men of their youth or eating fish. The swimming club feed on the former, don't they? Naruto deducted, earning a nod from Tamao as she looked away in shame and he continued with a dark, talk about ruining an image. And I don't want to do it. Tamao choked out as tears began to fall. My mother raised me too, but they said I had to, or I'll never be happy. Hey, the blonde quietly said, cautiously sitting at her side on the bed and placing a friendly arm around her shoulders. It's okay, Tamao-chan. We understand, right? Yeah, I mean, Moka sucks Naruto-koi's blood all the time and he doesn't care, Kurumu said somewhat cheerfully. Naruto and Moka's sweat dropped while Tamao looked up with teary eyes at the blonde on her right. Really? She asked, sniffling cutely before continuing, I mean they said if I ever tried to leave the club they'd kill me. They actually said that? Moka gasped out while Naruto's eyes narrowed before he asked Tamao to elaborate and tell him everything about this club. He hated them more and more as she quietly told them about the swimming club's activities. These girls were in their own little cult, threatening the members with death and kidnapping boys, or tricking them into joining and practicing manslaughter on a daily basis. Tamao was still a feeding virgin as the members called it, thankfully having no previous meal as she was a new member, immediately signed up upon her arrival to the school. Naruto stood when she finished, his tomo slowly spinning as he kept a calm face. The three girls all looked at him in concern and he walked to the door. Pausing and turning around before opening the door, Naruto raised his hand to his face and bit the tip of his thumb off before falling into a series of hand signs. When he finished, he slammed his hand into the ground and exclaimed, "Uchiha no jutsu." A large blue toad about the size of the bed Tamao rested on, its body patterns being similar to a rainforest's poison dart frog and the secondary colors being a dark navy blue. The girls also took notice of the excessive amount of armor on its arms, head, chest and back. The armor looked reminiscent to a samurai's while being a dark coal color. "Naruto-san," the toad said with a nod. Naruto looked at the toad. "No one but myself or a clone of me enters or leaves for any reason. Not even the nurse," he ordered. The toad nodded his understanding and Naruto looked past him to the girls within. "I'll be back shortly. Don't try and get past Gamabaujo. He's very obedient when a Gamakuzuha gives him an order." "Right, Baujo-san." "Hi, Naruto-san," Gamabaujo replied with a nod. Naruto nodded back and walked out the door, not waiting to hear the girl's efforts at a rebuttal. What he was going to do would be illegal on many grounds and he didn't want any of them, Tamao included, to be at risk from his rash actions. "Who are you?" A girl with green hair and an even tan asked him as he stood outside of the main pool in the bathing suit he had chosen when Tamao first grabbed him. "Tamao-chan told me to come here at 5 for some swimming lessons," he replied, faking a blush as his hinged blue eyes looked down at his feet in mock embarrassment. He could practically feel her soak in his adorable kid look that his sensei had named during their travels. Jiraiya had forced him to use it often when he went cheap on the blonde and Naruto had to beg for money. "Aw, poor thing," the green-haired girl cooed, "come on in, I'll teach you how to swim." She grabbed his wrist before he could refuse her offer and turned around, dragging him towards the pool. She didn't notice the small smile on his face as she dragged him inside. "Please." Moka tried again to plead with the toad. The blue being refused to budge, however, his loyalty to his summoner overriding the cute faces he was faced against. "Naruto-san's word is law," Gamabaujo said with a small croak afterwards, "and I don't break the law, brace yourselves." "For what?" Tamao asked quietly when a loud group shriek echoed through the school grounds. A few patients recovering from Ichinus's rampage woke up due to the shriek, each one wondering why they were in the infirmary. Naruto returned only an hour after he had left, a slight pant in his breathing the only evidence of his exhausting activity whatever it was exactly. He dismissed Gamabaujo and took all three girls back to their respective rooms, being sure to take Moka back to her room last so she could get a light snack before bed. The hour after he left, 15 girls, all members of the swimming club, were admitted to the infirmary. They were convulsing with electric shocks time and time again. Tsunade would complain later that night to a fellow nurse that it smelled like fried fish in the infirmary because of the new patients the PSC brought in. The next day had brought surprise after surprise for the newspaper club. Tamao had signed up first thing during her free period and leapt onto Naruto, earning very displeased shrieks from both Kurumu and Moka. The three then got into a small fisticuffs, enjoyed by Naruto for a moment before he assisted Nekonom-sensei with separating them via Kage Bunshin. Now, 2 weeks later, the girls' rivalry for his heart or insane stamina, Naruto wasn't sure which of the two they were after anymore, wasn't the problem. Naruto's right eye twitched as he saw the perverted boy known as Janae squatting outside of the women's bath with a camera in hand. Now, the reason he was back there was legit. He was going to drop a small smoke bomb in the showers, of both genders mind you. But now, a favorite pastime of his came back to the forefront of his mind. Bust the peak. The concept is simple enough. Do something to alert the pervert's presence to the ones being peeped on and then enjoy as the perv is harmed. Hot damn, those are huge. Naruto suddenly shouted before sunshining away, his cry earning the attention of the women being peeped on. They all saw a glare reflecting through the small window from where Janae was peeping and they all reacted any sane woman would. They screamed and attacked. Naruto grinned as he watched from above as Janae began trying to defend his actions while the girls cracked their knuckles or began changing into their true forms. He pulled his camera out and began taking pictures. He could already read the next headline for his next article. Beware this pervert. Naruto-kun. Moka cried in joy as the blonde walked towards the picnic table they often sat at. Hey, Moka-chan. Naruto replied with a wave as he tucked his camera into a hidden pouch with an expansion seal he added into his Monstar's vest. Speaking of said vest, it didn't take long for the pink-haired vampire to notice his recent modification to his school attire. Where'd you get the vest, Naruto-kun? Moka asked as the blonde sat next to her. He asked, arching a brow before he realized what she had asked and he replied, oh yeah, I took it from a supply closet. Naruto-kun. Moka sighed out as she held her head in slight annoyance before giving the blonde a pleading look. If I don't tell anyone, can I have a drink? I don't care if you tell anyone, Moka-chan, Naruto said with a shrug, and why didn't you just? Before he could finish, the pink-haired girl wrapped her arms around his shoulders and bit into his neck from behind. The Tomoed blonde winced at the awkward bite position before tilting his head slightly and relaxing. It was when the two voices proclaiming their disapproval hit his ears did he get a feeling of dread about how this day was going to turn out. "Get off my destined one, Moka." Kurumu growled as she approached, her eye twitching in annoyance as she watched Moka drink from Naruto's neck in a slightly erotic position. "You wish he was your destined one, succubus," Tamao muttered with a glare from the corner of her eyes, before looking back at the annoyed vampire that had finished drinking, but remained where she was, "and you better watch yourself, Akashiya-san. My mate is not your personal blood bank." "Your mate?" The busty blue-haired girl growled, her hand clutching tightly on the table's edge. "You tried to eat him." "I said I was sorry." The mermaid shot back before looking at Moka as she moved back to sit next to the blonde apologetically, "And I'm also sorry for Master Ninju." "There, I said it." "Barely," Naruto thought before giving Moka a nudge in the side. "I think that's fair. Second chance." Moka remained quiet for a moment before sighing and giving her response, "Fine, but only because Naruto-kun thinks you deserve it." "Works for me." Tamao exclaimed with a grin, quickly appearing on the blonde's lap, her unbuttoned white blouse revealing her bikini-clad assets and her school uniform skirt falling to the middle of her thighs. Naruto's face flushed dark red, and the two girls also present grit their teeth in annoyance. "What's on the schedule for today, Naru-kun?" Tamao cooed, lightly running her finger along his left top whisker mark. Moka and Kurumu felt their jaws drop when Naruto's eyes instantly drooped and he released a small rumble that could be described as a purr. Intrigued, the mermaid ran her fingers over another whisker mark, earning another drawn-out purr and causing Naruto's eyes to shut. Tamao continued to happily run her fingers across the whisker marks on the blonde's cheeks, causing him to rest his head on her shoulder and purr in content. "Aoi!" Kurumu exclaimed, suddenly appearing at Naruto's side and shoving Tamao onto Moka before taking the mermaid's spot and petting him similar to how her fellow blue-haired friend did. Before long, Moka had done as she did and began petting Naruto in her stead. The pink-haired vampire was smiling as she gave some sort of pleasure back to the boy she felt strong feelings for. Before long, however, the bell rang again and they reluctantly ran off to get to class, Moka and Tamao being sensible enough to drag a barely stirring Naruto along with them. Only for them to discover an upcoming quarter test that counted for a grand portion of their final grade for that semester. The blonde male with them sweated slightly in nervousness alongside the succubus that clung to his right arm. Neither were exactly the best when it came to Nekonim-sensei's class. Naruto because he didn't see the need to blend in with human society, because he was partially one, and Kurumu because well, they say some girls either have beauty or brains, don't they? Or does that apply to blondes and blue-haired girls only? This however wasn't Naruto's main concern. No, the main concern was standing in front of him with an adorable pout on her face. "Do you want to study with me, Naruto-kun?" Moka asked with a small blush and a forced puppy dog look. Cursing whatever god created such a face, Naruto grinned foxily. "Sure thing, Moka-chan." The blonde said with a grin. The two girls also with him scowled and glared at the beaming Pinket, causing the Tomoed-eyed boy to internally question his sexuality for his moral code self-destruction due to the catfight that would come from this. But I need Naruto-koi to help me with my studying." Kurumu whined. "You do not, slut," Tamao hissed, wrapping her arms around Naruto's free arm and pouting up at him, "but I do. The swim club kept me from class time and time again, please help me, Naru-kun." Now faced with three options, Naruto mentally activated his Tsukiyomi technique on himself to think about a proper response. First outcome. He helps only one of them, causing a catfight and drawing a crowd. Second outcome. He invites them all to his room for a study group and one of them tries to trick the others into not showing up and the next day, whether he was raped or not, a catfight would ensue. The blonde mused over this before mentally coming up with a plan and his chibi self began dancing victoriously. He flashed the three of them a grin and freed his arms from Kurumu and Tamao, both pouting upon his action, before he brought his hands up into the tiger seal and he created two duplicates. "This way I can study with all of you," he exclaimed, believing this to be an ingenious plan. The drawback he had not foreseen was the sudden arrival of several girls squealing and begging him to be a study buddy, too. Needless to say, a catfight was started then and there outside Nekonim-sensei's classroom, the poor shinobi wallowing mentally as he tried to control the girls and keep the perverts crowding them away. "Whoa, what happened, Taiji, Proby?" Mac asked as he appeared at Naruto's side, while the blonde grunted and collapsed into a chair with the number 1 on it. "I don't want to talk about it," the blonde groaned as he dropped his head onto his arms in an attempt to sleep before he was given an order by his new boss. "He looks like a bog had seeped into his room," a bog-named woman, Rawhead snickered out as he took a sip of his coffee. Naruto sent the Bujiman a glare through his exhausted eyes, and the Scot laughed before continuing, "You don't like teasing, then don't go making 15 clones of yourself in front of hormonal and single females. Tuck man, I'm the straightest board on the lot and I'd still tuck you all night long. Faggot." Mac shouted before the two erupted in roars of laughter. A chuckle came from the largest member, Blitz, and snickers came from the second smallest, Vern, both earning glares from the blonde. A glass of black liquid was placed before Naruto, and he blinked before looking to his right and seeing Draco sitting next to him. "Ah, leave him alone," the dragon said, his smile betraying his apparent disapproval of the joke. "Poor son of a fish is being hounded by 3 girls. Add fangirls onto that, and any sane man would turn gay. Not to mention the fact he's blonde, tan, and a very pretty man." Vern chimed, earning even more laughter from the Scot and Irishman spirits. Even Naruto couldn't deny the truth to that sentence, and he chuckled before grabbing the glass and taking a sip. "Careful, Proby," Blitz warned, earning a glance from the blonde as he casually drank from the glass. "Draco's espresso isn't the mildest of drinks." "Frostbite me, Yeti," Draco said with a smirk, earning a raised middle finger from the Tibet native. Shaking his head with his smirk still in place, Draco pulled his cigarette out and lit it before his face turned serious, causing all smiles to fall and everyone else to sit up straighter. "Word around the school is a half-breed showed up," the bald teen said after exhaling smoke through his nostrils. "A witch?" "Nay." Mac shouted, rising to his feet. "Where she be from?" "Blackpool. Archbridge." "She's from the States, Mac," Draco said casually, taking another puff of his cancer stick before continuing. "Smart too. A tuckin' prodigy." Naruto snorted. He'd met prodigies before, and most of them tended to be stuck-up assholes with sob stories. Hell, the last owner of his eyes was one of the prodigies. Ignoring Naruto's obvious dismissal of his words, Draco continued, "Anyway, she's only 11. This got everyone's attention, Naruto's included. This was new. She could turn into one of 2 people he knew, a Kakashi or an Itachi. Kakashi, his genin sensei and part-time mentor, was a genius in shinobi ways and became a jonin at 12, or was it younger than 12? He couldn't remember. Anyway, Kakashi was loyal to a fault and dangerous. But, he wasn't the type of prodigy that went crazy and killed off his whole clan. Like Uchiha Itachi did. Naruto shuddered at the brief recollection of the elder brother of his former friend. Their last meeting wasn't pleasant. "We're to be her bodyguards then?" Vern asked with a scowl. "It's her own damn fault for coming to this school." "I only need one of you two." Draco started when Naruto interrupted. "I'll look into it with the newspaper club. Got any more backstory for us?" "She's a witch, what more backstory do you need, Uzumaki?" Ra had asked with an arched brow only to be met with a pair of confused Tomoed eyes. "Witches aren't loved here, Naruto," Blitz said quietly, earning the table's attention. "Many monsters find them intolerable because of their close relevance to humans, and consequently, monsters view them as inferior and openly ignore their presence." Naruto's eyes flashed to mangekyo, and he stood up and walked to a door with a 1 on it. Before anyone could ask, he looked over his shoulder and said, "I'll deal with this personally. If I need help, I'll let you know." "Don't act too rashly, Uzumaki," the leader warned in a serious tone. "I don't want Kuyo to know you're with us just yet." "He'll never know if I can help it," the blonde muttered before he vanished in a swirl of leaves. It remained quiet for a moment before Max spoke. "Tuck and show off." "Naruto koi." A certain busty succubus shouted as she jumped onto his back. The blonde teen stumbled before hooking his arms under her legs and looking back at the sexy succubus with a nervous smile. He had been using his day off of studies to try and find the half-breed he agreed to watch over for the club. So far, his search turned up nothing. Aside from the constant denying a date from several older girls that kept approaching him. Not to mention he had been reverse summoned for the first time by Fukasaku and offered a chance to train in the Gamasenin ways. He said he had to think about it, but Fukasaku said he wanted an answer by the end of the week at the latest, before sending the blonde back. "Hey Kuru-chan," Naruto greeted kindly, stuttering due to the way the succubus was rubbing her assets against his back. "How's it going?" "Great now that I'm with you," Kurumu purred before reaching up and running her finger over his whisker mark. The blonde's gaze dimmed and a content purr escaped his throat, making Kurumu giggle with amusement. Taking a chance, Kurumu whispered, "Wanna go study in my room, koi?" Naruto's response was dazed due to the pleasure he felt when the busty girl ran her finger over his mark again. The succubus smiled as she slid off his back and walked around to wrap her arms around Naruto's neck. "We never get any alone time, Naruto koi." Kurumu pouted before beaming as Naruto began to snap from his daze. "Let's go on a date tonight." "The wano," were the replies to her suggestion. Kurumu cursed under her breath as the 2 other girls aiming for Naruto's heart approached them, scowls on their gorgeous faces. Tamao was the next to divert her attention to the blonde that was still recovering from La La Land, and she smiled before attaching herself to his right arm. Naru-kun, she whined, earning the dazed boy's attention. Why would you go on a date with that slutty girl and not a woman with athletic skills on par with your own? Athletic wa? Naruto repeated, still trying to regain his bearings when Moka grabbed his left arm and got his attention. The pink-cat vampire gave him her signature puppy dog pout before throwing her own attempt at the blonde. But I'm hungry, Naruto-kun, can I have a snack? Moka pleaded. The other two glared at her, and if it were possible, the strength of their glares would have melted her into a puddle of goo on the spot. The blonde teen, on the other hand, had recovered as soon as Moka mentioned his name and the word snack. With a reluctant sigh, Naruto tilted his head to the right. Oh yay. Moka's cheer interrupted his reply before she suddenly latched onto his neck. Tamao and Kurumu looked positively livid at her actions, both cursing the pink-haired vampire that seemed to have their destined one-mate to be wrapped around her finger. The blonde, however, simply stood still and waited for her to finish feeding when his mission returned to his mind. Looking at the two blue-haired girls as the vampire fed, he asked, "Hey, do either of you know about a witch at this school? She's supposed to be a prodigy or something." "The witch?" they chorused in confusion. Tamao put an arm under her bikini-clad bust while putting a hand on her chin as she thought, and Kurumu closed her eyes tightly while crossing her arms under her own impressive chest, appearing to think about it. At the same time, both girls looked back at a curious Naruto, who still had an occasionally contently sighing Moka latched on his neck with her arms under his and wrapped around his chest as she fed and said, "You must mean Sendo Yukari." "Sendo Yukari, huh?" Naruto repeated as Moka released his neck and sighed while continuing to hold herself against the blonde. Naruto looked at her over his shoulder and smirked, "Well, thanks for deciding to let me live, Moka-chan." "Oh." Moka blushed in embarrassment as she released the toad-eyed boy and took a step away from him. "Sorry, Naruto-kun, your blood is just so good. My mother always said your first is delicious and I'm afraid I'm addicted to yours." While Naruto silently wondered if having a vampire addicted to your blood was good or a bad thing, Kurumu, whose mind always fell in the gutter, only heard a certain tidbit of Moka's words and angrily proclaimed, "You're first. I said to keep your distance, Akashiya." "What?" Moka confusedly asked before she was suddenly attacked by the succubus, being tackled to the ground while Naruto ignored the squabble, knowing that Kurumu wouldn't transform out of fear to be sent to Tsukiyomi by the Tomoe boy and formed another clone before dispelling it. Tamao, who also was ignoring the small squabble and the constant yelps coming from her adversaries after Naruto's heart, blinked in confusion at the blonde's actions. "Why did you just make another clone, Naru-kun?" Tamao asked curiously while the Tomoe blonde suddenly sat on the ground in a meditative stance. "You'll see," he said mysteriously, gracing her with one of his mischievous grins and unknowingly making her heart pound with it. A moment later, the blonde gasped, hopped back to his feet and ran to the school building before rushing up the side. Tamao's jaw fell as she saw her mate to be run up the building, the action going unnoticed by Kurumu and Moka, the latter now pinning the former and explaining her words as the former began to accept it. While Kurumu apologized, Tamao suddenly helped both girls to their feet and gave Moka a questioning gaze. Moka, confused and slightly intimidated by the gaze, asked, "Can I help you, Tamao-san?" "You know what type of monster Naru-kun is, don't you?" Tamao asked with narrowed eyes. Moka blinked and slowly shook her head. Tamao continued to study the girl's face before grabbing her head and groaning in frustration. "The one guy I know will survive my mating dance, and I don't know what type of monster he is," she screamed. The mermaid pouted childishly, puffing her cheeks and crossing her arms before saying, "I hate this school's anti-revealing rule. If it's any consolation, I do know he said he was a type of Hanyu," Moka said, trying to appease the frustrated mermaid. The mermaid did seem to perk up at that. Kurumu finally noticed a certain object of their affection was missing in action. "Hey. Where'd Naruto-koi go?" Kurumu asked as she looked around for said blonde. Moka began assisting the succubus in searching for a sight of the boy when Tamao answered the girl's question as to where he had gone. "Naru-kun made a clone, dispelled it, and then sat down meditatively," she said, earning her adversary's attention, "then he shot to his feet and ran up that wall." "Ran up the wall?" Kurumu and Moka repeated. Tamao nodded before shrugging and said, "He ran on water, didn't he?" As the three began discussing their new subject, guess Naruto's species, Naruto leapt from rooftop to the tree line that surrounded the school. He rushed to the last position of one clone before it dispelled itself. What that clone had seen pissed the blonde off furiously. His clone asked a nearby student where he could find Sendo Yukari because he needed help with his homework and lied about having made a deal with the girl. The student chuckled and gestured to the tree line where the clone saw a young brunette desperately trying to retrieve a stick of some sort from two kids about his age that taunted her and played a game of keep away before saying, "They're teaching her a lesson or two, so you might want to go look for some other tutor." Naturally, the clone would have leapt into action, but it was aware of its fragility and the fact it could dispel after one blow. Instead of risking enraging the three, dispelling, and risking his charge's safety even more than it already was, the clone thanked the boy before walking away. Once far enough away, the clone dispelled and Naruto received everything from it, including its anger. Naruto paused as he crouched on a branch above the three teens, the one his clone spoke to had joined the game, and narrowed his eyes. Yukari kept barely missing the stick they tossed about, her eyes close to tears, but not daring to spill. The tomote-eyed blonde narrowed his eyes, recalling a similar occurrence when several freshly made genin that passed during his first last year at the Konohagakure Academy tossed the goggles his Jiji had given him around, teasing him profoundly. Fighting the memory down, Naruto dropped from his branch, snatching the stick as it was thrown and landed between the three that had been torturing the small brunette. "Hey. What do you think you're doing, punk?" the boy he had spoken to asked. Yukari blinked when the blonde boy before her looked down at her with tomoed cerulean blue eyes and smiled. He offered the stick to her and flashed a very thankful witch his signature foxy grin, making the young girl blush profoundly. "I dunno what's so special about a stick," he said with genuine kindness, "but I do know what it's like to be pushed around. I've gotta have a few words with these guys, so why don't you go practice spells or something, kid? Come find me afterwards." Yukari blinked again before nodding in confusion and started to run away, quickly ducking behind a tree to watch the ensuing fight. Naruto knew she was there, but he didn't mind. She was out of the bully's way, and that's all that mattered to him. The boy who had spoken to his clone shouted at the blonde savior, "What the tuck is your problem? She's a damn witch, you dolt. I'm the class president and I say she's the outlet of our frustrations." "Whoopie tuck can do for you," Naruto calmly said, his eyes narrowing on the apparent class president. "I don't give a damn if you're the tucking headmaster, you're nothing more than a group of posers talking a big talk." "Talking a big talk, eh?" the class president said with a smirk before nodding to the two with him, "We'll see who's talking a big talk when we kick your ass." The three simultaneously rushed him and he sighed. Utilizing Kawamari to dodge their charge, Naruto watched from a safe distance as the three buffoons comically collided with each other headfirst. The blonde laughed as they all groaned and held their heads, each one cursing profoundly before glaring in his direction. "What's wrong, boys?" Naruto taunted, "I thought you were going to kick my ass." "Nice trick," a voice said from behind him. Naruto was none too surprised to see a fourth man behind him, said teen suddenly changing into a lizard man and his clothes being shed like a second skin. Inwardly, he fought back the urge to scream in terror as the memory of Orochimaru shedding his disguise, while outwardly he smirked. "Nice breath," he joked before lifting his left leg up at the knee, earning a yell of pain and his freedom. The lizard man fell to his knees and held his crotch as tears fell from his eyes. Naruto smirked evilly and looked back at the three shocked boys before cracking his neck and rolling his shoulders. "Who else wants some?" he asked with his savage grin. The two lackeys looked at the stunned class president before he started backing away. The bloodlust radiating off the blonde was scary, and he wanted none of it. The two lackeys also began to retreat, only to turn to face three of the most beautiful girls they had ever seen. "Holy shit." they chorused as drools started to appear. From her hiding spot, Yukari also drooled upon seeing the pink-haired goddess of the school, Moka. The young witch had seen her from time to time and faintly remembered seeing a blonde boy with her. Yukari's eyes widened in realization that the blonde was the boy she had seen often with the beautiful Moka. "Aheyo, Moka-chan, Tamao-chan, Kuru-chan," Naruto said with a grin, making the three boys gape upon realizing exactly who the boy was, if he was associated with the three freshman girls many lusted for. Horror crossed their faces and they spun around, facing the boy and resisting the urge to stare at the beauties behind them. Naruto's position as guardian to Moka had spread rather quickly when he threatened that one boy near the beginning of the year. "You Uzumaki and Naruto," the class president shakily said before swallowing in fear when the blonde appeared right in front of him, his mangekyo Sharingan glaring at him threateningly despite the smile on his face. "You might want to leave my sight now," he whispered to the teen, "before I tell the three behind you how not only you were bullying a little girl, but also tried to tackle me, their friend." "This eye isn't over," the class president shakily threatened. Naruto snorted and jerked his head, making the three boys rush back to the school. The blonde smirked and looked at the three girls watching with confusion as the three teens ran away. The fourth lizard man slinked back into the forest, still cradling himself and limping as he did so unnoticed. "What was that about, Naruto-kun?" Moka asked in concern, afraid her troublemaking crush had caused more trouble for himself. Tamao and Kurumu nodded in agreement, also wishing to know what the confrontation they interrupted was all about. "Nothing to concern your pretty little head about, Moka-chan," Naruto assured her with a pat on her head as he walked past her to a tree where a small girl kept poking her head out to see him. As she poked her head back out from behind the tree, Yukari found herself face to face with her whiskered savior. The young witch yelped and fell back on her behind from shock while Naruto laughed slightly in amusement. The girl blushed and suddenly waved her wand. Naruto jerked his head back in time to avoid being struck by a falling pot. Now that wasn't very nice, Naruto said to the girl with a small smirk as he crossed his arms over his chest. Yukari's eyes narrowed and she went to wave her wand again when she realized it wasn't in her hands anymore. "Hey!" she shouted, "give that back." "This is your wand, isn't it?" he asked while examining the small stick in his hands. Humph would have figured it to look more like a star-tipped stick of something. "Give it back now," Yukari shouted, hopping to her feet and reaching for it. Naruto lazily glanced at her before holding the stick between two fingers at either end and bent it experimentally, making her eyes widen before she fearfully explained, "No." "What?" he asked, releasing the strained type of hold on the stick and held it in one hand. "Would it break if I did that? Couldn't you just find another stick?" "Give it back, idiot," Yukari shouted, reaching for the wand again. "I need it." "Naruto-kun, give it back." Moka shouted, "You're being a bully." Naruto rolled his eyes. "I am not, I'm just looking at it, relax Moka-chan." A slap to the back of the head courtesy of Moka made the blonde yelp and gave the young witch her wand back. As soon as it was in her hands, she waved it again and a heavy pot fell on the already pained blonde's head, making him yowl in pain and clutch his head. "Goddamned brat," he shouted, "Tuck. That hurt." "Serves you right," Yukari shouted, "you meanie. I help you escape the troublesome trio and I'm the meanie." Naruto shot back, small tears of pain welling in the corners of his eyes. "Get your priorities straight. I didn't need your help and I didn't ask for it." The witch shouted, "I've always been able to handle myself without anyone's help for most of my life. I would have been able to handle them." The three girls standing behind Naruto gasped at the brunette's proclamation. To be alone at that age they couldn't begin to consider how the girl felt. Naruto kept his angered facade up while inwardly, he sympathized with the young witch. He knew all too well what it was like to be alone for so long. Naruto kept an even gaze on the girl standing before him before rolling his neck and rubbing the back of his head. Giving the young girl a grin, he patted her head through her witch-like hat and smiled, thoroughly confusing all the girls present. "You've got guts, kid," he said with a grin, a brotherly smile he gave to a small boy in a fishing village long ago reappearing on his face. "I respect that. Watch your temper though, Yukari. It might wind you into a situation I won't be able to bail you out of." That said and done, the blonde vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving four very confused girls behind. Yukari, now nervous that the boy was gone, quickly ran back to her own dorm and away from the teenage girls with her. The next day, Naruto sighed as he avoided a paint can falling on his head for the third time that day as he left the school. Ever since his encounter with the witch Draco instructed him to watch over, he had been avoiding falling objects like it was raining them, only instead they would be posted over doorways. Only one managed to hit him, and luckily for the blonde, it was an eraser jammed in the doorway of his homeroom when he entered, just a few moments before the bell rang. He recalled a similar prank to his sensei and knew immediately that war had been declared against him. He had a faint idea as to who it was that declared it, too. As he walked towards the forest to the back entrance of the Monstars clubhouse, he felt a small barely readable chakra signature. "Aka," said which he had to defend. The familiar bam sound of a pot appearing above his head confirmed his suspicions, and with a sigh, the blonde stepped back and turned around to see a shocked witch with her wand pointing at him standing a few feet from him. Running his hand through his golden locks, the blonde grumbled a question to the few deities that decided to listen to him at that moment. "Was I anything like this back home?" Shaking his head from the thought, Naruto looked at the girl and crossed his arms, so 10 feet was as close as you could get. "Shut up," Yukari shouted, still pointing her wand at him. "I read up on you, Uzumaki Baka. You're nothing but a brainless thug." "True, but I'm not a pipsqueak anymore," he shot back with a grin. Yukari turned red in the face and growled threateningly at him, but he considered it to be more along the lines of what an angry little sibling would be like. "Cute. I'm the perfect height for someone my age." Yukari defended herself before her eyes narrowed, "and I demand you stay away from Moka." Naruto blinked before shrugging, "Sorry, not my choice in the matter. You want me away from Moka, talk to her. Which you can do in about 3-2. Naruto-kun." Moka called, rushing to his side and passing the shocked witch she paid no heed to before hugging the blonde. Her cheeks reddened when she realized what she was doing and she stepped back, putting her hands behind her sheepishly. "Gomen Naruto-kun, can I?" Yeah, Naruto waved her off, rolling his eyes and tilting his head to the left. Moka released a cry of joy before wrapping her arms around him again and biting down, giving a small moan of content when she began to drink his blood. Naruto put his arms around her before he began lightly swaying, just to tease the shocked witch in front of him. Yukari watched with wide eyes as the pincat she adored gave the school idiot a hickey to rival all hickeys. "Why you get away from Moka-chan?" Yukari shouted before waving her wand. Several pots appeared above Naruto's head and they fell hard. The blonde took each hit with a grunt, eventually disrupting Moka's meal and making her back off from him. When she released him, a little disgruntled and flushed that her feeding was interrupted by his seemingly naughty grunts, the blonde began swaying again. "As the salt am Nichan, dis mizo ramen is too bland," the tomod-eyed boy muttered before his eyes rolled into the back of his head and he fell backwards. "Out like a light," some would say. "Naruto-kun." Moka exclaimed in shock before turning to see a very smug-looking Yukari, "Why did you do that? He doesn't deserve your affection. He won't appreciate you like I do, Moka-chan." Yukari cried, suddenly appearing before the pink-haired vampire and beaming up at her. "Come on, Moka-chan, let's get away from this dope and be together forever." What? No. Why would I go with someone that hurt my friend? Moka asked, making Yukari's beaming look drop into a frown. "Why you don't like me either, do you?" she asked quietly. Moka blinked in confusion before Yukari's lips started to tremble. Before she could attempt to console the girl, Naruto released a groan of pained awakening and her attention went to him. The sudden change in attention caused the young witch to become angry at the pinkette. "I thought you were different," she cried before waving her wand and willing a pot to appear over Moka's head. It fell and connected with the pinkette, making her cry out in pain as Yukari ran away, hiding her tears from the very confused vampire. "Well," Naruto grunted as he sat up, "that could have gone better. You okay, Moka-chan?" "Hi, thank you, Naruto-kun," Moka said as she rubbed her head. "What was that all about?" Naruto remained quiet as he saw a bird suddenly fly off after the fleeing witch. He kept a calm face as he stood and then assisted Moka to her own feet. After waving off the gratitude for the assistance to standing, he said, "Come on. Let's go get Kurumu and Tamao. I have a feeling we're gonna need their help." "For what?" Moka asked. Naruto didn't respond as they walked back into the school to the newspaper club's room. When they arrived, he was greeted by the same greetings he received from Kurumu and Tamao. Kurumu would glump him, attempting to kill him by pushing his face into her voluptuous pillows, and Tamao would saunter over to him, while Moka would reprimand Kurumu, asking if he wanted to go to the jacuzzi or to a lake she knew of. He didn't even bother to answer her, instead he suddenly summoned a toad. "Amaterasu," he greeted with a nod while the three girls gaped at the large dog-sized toad that was yellow and had orange markings on it as well as a blue vest. "How's it going?" "Nah, I'm hungry Nyasan." Gamatsu whined. Naruto rolled his eyes and reached into his vest, which he had several seals drawn over the night after he got it, before somehow pulling out 4 bags of BBQ chips. The yellow-skinned toad's eyes widened upon seeing them, before he could grab them though, Naruto pulled them back. Now, Tatsu-kun," he teased with a smile, "what's Naruto's rule?" Amaterasu sighed longingly before looking at the blonde, "Always assist Nyasan before getting a snack." "What can I do, Nyasan?" "I want you to give Fukasaku-sama a simple message, the reply to the question he asked me yesterday," he said. Gamatsu nodded, taking the information in, and Naruto continued, "In 3 months, I'll be ready." "Okie dokie, Nyasan. I'll tell Fukajiji right away," Gamatsu said with a smile before looking at the chips. With a grin, Naruto gave the large toad the 4 bags, which he quickly shoved into his mouth, plastic wrappings and all, before swallowing. After satisfyingly smacking his lips, Gamatsu smiled at the blonde and vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto, satisfied he had accomplished something he had been thinking about while dodging the many items Yukari attacked him with. "Was that a toad?" Tamao asked with wide eyes. "A toad from Mount Maiboku. You know about the Gama clan?" Naruto asked with equally wide eyes as he looked at the mermaid. Said girl slowly nodded her head. "I thought Butkasan said legend before she could be asked to repeat her disbelieving mumbles." Tamao squealed loudly and glumped onto Naruto. I figured it out. She cried as she squeezed Naruto in a hug, the blonde suddenly finding himself wondering where she had gotten the surge in strength. "Figured what out?" Naruto managed to ask. No answer aside from a sudden locking of lips was the one her received. Tamao expertly slid her tongue into his mouth and explored its taste. Grape, so this is what a shinobi tastes like. Hanyu assassins, Kasan called them. More like hunks for the taking. Tamao shoots and scores. Before she could really begin enjoying the kiss, Naruto was just about to respond. Kurumu and Moka pulled the mermaid from her perch on the blonde's lap. The three then began to fight, while a dazed Naruto fell back in his seat, his mind sent into a whirl as he tried to wrap it around what had just happened. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.